Welcome to Kingdom Mysteries Evaluation. Today we delve into the relentless faith of Moses and Solomon's fall, the sad end of the wisest king. Follow through the insightful teachings from the scriptures, as this will greatly influence your faith life positively and open you up to moral lessons about the mistakes believers encounter on their journey of faith. Have you ever wondered what made the prophet Moses so remarkable? What was the secret behind his unwavering resolve and his closeness to God? In a time when his people were enslaved and oppressed, one man rose up, performing wonders that would echo through the ages. This is the story of Moses, a prophet who unlocked a powerful truth, one that every believer should know. Picture this. Moses stands at the edge of the Red Sea, with Pharaoh's army closing in. His people are trapped, panic spreading among them. Yet Moses, with steadfast faith, lifts his staff, trusting in God's promise. Suddenly, the waters part, opening a miraculous path to freedom. But what gave him the courage to stand firm in such a moment? What was the source of his unshakable faith? As we dive into Moses' story, we'll uncover a truth so simple yet profound that it has the power to change your walk with God. This isn't just an ancient tale, it's a blueprint for modern faith. Are you ready to discover the secret that made Moses one of the Bible's greatest leaders? A secret that could revolutionize your own spiritual journey? Buckle up as we explore the life of a man who defied empires, parted seas, and spoke face-to-face with God. But more importantly, we'll uncover the timeless principle that fueled his extraordinary relationship with the divine. A principle just as relevant for you today as it was thousands of years ago. So, are you prepared to unlock the secret of Moses? To tap into the same source of power that guided this servant of God? What you're about to learn could transform how you approach your faith and your relationship with God. To understand the magnitude of Moses' journey, we must step back in time and grasp the world he lived in. Imagine a nation in bondage, an entire people who had lost hope, enduring the daily burdens of slavery. This was the setting for Moses' extraordinary mission. Egypt was ruled by pharaohs who viewed themselves as gods, lording over the Israelites with cruelty and oppression. The people had all but forgotten the promises made to their ancestors. Yet, in the depths of despair, God heard their cries and called upon Moses, a shepherd with a troubled past, to confront Pharaoh. The parallels to our own time are striking. Just as Moses faced a society lost in idolatry, we too navigate a world filled with distractions and false promises. But here's where Moses' story becomes even more compelling. Despite his own fears and weaknesses, Moses didn't turn away from his calling. Instead, he relied on a secret source of strength that would change the course of history. As we peel back the layers of Moses' story, we begin to see that his background wasn't just a backdrop for his mission. It was the crucible that strengthened his faith. His challenges weren't just obstacles. They were the very reason his mission was so vital. In many ways, we stand where Moses stood. Our world, like his, is in desperate need of truth, faith, and unwavering courage. And just as Moses was given a secret that empowered him to face these challenges, so too are we invited to access that same source of strength. Now, let's turn our attention to one of the most defining moments in Moses' journey, the encounter at the burning bush. This extraordinary meeting between Moses and God would change everything, setting into motion the liberation of an entire nation. Imagine the scene. Moses is tending his flock when he notices a bush ablaze, yet not consumed by the fire. Driven by curiosity, he approaches, only to hear a voice calling his name. It's God, revealing his divine plan for Moses to lead his people out of Egypt. But Moses hesitates, doubting his own abilities. Then, God offers him a sign, transforming Moses' staff into a serpent and back again, a demonstration of his power and assurance. In Exodus 3 verse 14, God speaks a powerful truth that will carry Moses through his trials. I am who I am. With these words, God reassures Moses of his eternal presence, a promise that echoes to us today. This encounter wasn't just a miraculous sign. It was a revelation of Moses' true purpose. Through the burning bush, we see a man who found the courage to stand against impossible odds. The message of this encounter reverberates through the ages. Our God is not a distant deity, but a close, ever-present force willing to guide and empower us, as he did Moses. In these pivotal moments, we witness a man completely aligned with God's will, reliant on God's strength, and committed to God's calling. The burning bush wasn't merely a symbol of God's power. It was a testament to what can happen when a person aligns with divine purpose. It reminds us that even today, God is willing to work through us. As we reflect on this profound event, we begin to see the secret that transformed Moses into a fearless leader, a secret that is still available to every believer today. So what was the key to Moses' strength? It wasn't in his own abilities, but in his unwavering faith and trust in God's promises. Moses' journey wasn't just about performing miracles. It was about aligning with God's will, allowing divine strength to work through him. Consider Hebrews 11 verse 27, where it says, "By faith he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible." Moses' life wasn't defined by fear, but by a powerful relationship with God, who guided him through every trial. Moses' faith and trust were deeply connected. His faith led him to trust in God's promises, and that trust strengthened his resolve in times of doubt. This cycle of faith and trust became the foundation of his life. Furthermore, Moses' faith was rooted in humility. He never acted out of pride, but sought God's guidance with every step. Before he led his people across the Red Sea, Exodus 14, verse 13 records him saying, "Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." This is the heart of Moses' secret, a life devoted to faith, humility, and obedience. It's a life where trust in God is not just a principle, but the very foundation of one's existence. The incredible truth is that this secret isn't exclusive to Moses. It's available to every believer. We have the same access to God's presence, power, and guidance as he did. We can cultivate a relationship with God grounded in faith, humility, and trust. As we continue to explore Moses' story, let's hold on to this key. Understanding the power of faith and trust in Moses' life can change our own walk with God. After leading his people through the Red Sea, Moses faced even greater challenges. He encountered moments of doubt, faced rebellions, and even faltered himself. But through it all, he never lost his trust in God. In Moses' later years, he was granted one final encounter with God, a vision of the Promised Land. Standing on Mount Nebo, he gazed. The city of Jerusalem was hushed with anticipation. Every street and alley was filled with eager faces, the citizens pressing forward to catch a glimpse of their beloved King Solomon. The morning sun cast its light over the city, glistening off the stone walls and rooftops, bathing everything in a golden glow. It was a sight to behold, a moment that carried the weight of 1,000 hopes. On the balcony of his palace, Solomon stood, resplendent in royal robes, the colors of deep indigo and silver reflecting the sunlight, making him seem almost otherworldly to the eyes that gazed upon him. His hand rose slowly, and the crowd, sensing his gesture, fell silent, their murmurs fading into an expectant stillness. Solomon's face was a study in calm resolve, yet his eyes betrayed a deeper compassion, a quiet understanding of the hopes and struggles of his people. He took a breath, feeling the enormity of the moment. He was not merely their king. He was a servant, a vessel for something far greater than himself. "My people," he began, his voice carrying through the square with a resonance that stilled even the smallest sounds. "Today, as I stand before you, I am reminded of the blessing of this throne and of the promises made by our Lord to my father, King David." He paused, his gaze moving over the crowd as if seeking each individual heart. "I stand here not by my own wisdom, nor by my own strength, but by the grace and mercy of the God of Israel, who has placed this crown upon my head. In his wisdom, I will rule. In his strength, I will serve." The crowd watched him in awe, but within himself, Solomon felt a deep humility. He was still young, and the memory of his father's teachings lingered in his mind like sacred whispers. David had spoken often of God's promises, of the covenants that bound their people to the Creator. Those words now echoed within him, grounding him in his purpose. Despite the cheers that rose as he concluded his address, Solomon did not bask in their adulation. Instead, he retreated to the solitude of his chambers, a quiet space where he could lay aside the mantle of kingship and kneel before his Maker. In those early days, Solomon's heart was filled with reverence. His nights were spent in deep prayer, his words flowing like a river as he poured his hopes, fears, and gratitude before God. He felt the divine presence close, almost tangible, a comfort and a guiding light that gave him strength and peace. He sought wisdom not for his own sake, but for the sake of his people, praying that he might lead with justice and kindness, that he might uphold the promises made to his father. In time, as he grew into his role, Solomon became known not just for his wisdom, but for his compassion. His judgments were fair, and his counsel wise, his words carrying a weight that could quiet even the most contentious debates. Yet Solomon knew the source of his strength. In every decision he made, he offered first in prayer, seeking to honor the God who had placed him on the throne. His people marveled at his wisdom, but for Solomon, each act of justice, each word of counsel, was a testament not to his own abilities, but to the grace that sustained him. One night, as he lay in prayer, he was overcome by a profound sense of longing. He desired not only the knowledge of earthly matters, but a deeper understanding of the divine. He felt his heart reaching out, yearning for a connection beyond human comprehension. It was during this time, in a moment of quiet devotion, that he received a vision. In his dream, God appeared to him, a presence both comforting and awe-inspiring. Solomon knelt, his heart filled with reverence, as God spoke, promising him wisdom and blessings beyond measure. When he awoke, the peace of that encounter lingered, filling him with a joy and humility that stayed with him long after the vision faded. With renewed purpose, Solomon set his sights on a project that had been close to his heart, the construction of a temple, a sacred dwelling for the presence of God. The task was monumental, requiring the finest materials and the most skilled craftsmen. Solomon spared no expense, commissioning cedar from the forests of Lebanon, precious stones, and gold from the far corners of his kingdom. He oversaw each detail with a meticulous eye, his hands and mind engaged in a labor of love and devotion. The temple rose slowly, a testament to Israel's faith and a sanctuary that would serve as a place of worship and a symbol of their covenant with God. The day of dedication arrived, and Solomon stood before the completed temple, a structure of such beauty and majesty that it seemed almost a part of heaven itself. The people gathered in awe as Solomon led them in prayer, his voice filled with emotion. "O Lord, God of Israel," he cried, "there is none like you, in heaven above or on earth below." As he spoke, a cloud descended upon the temple, a sign of God's presence, filling the sanctuary with a light so pure that it drove many to their knees in reverence. In that moment, Solomon felt a sense of fulfillment unlike any he had ever known. The temple stood as a testament to his devotion, a place where his people could come and feel the closeness of God. It was a moment of triumph, a culmination of years of faith and dedication. Yet, as time passed and the temple became a familiar sight, the clarity and purpose that had Soon, he embarked on a new endeavor, building a palace that rivaled even the temple in beauty and grandeur. The work consumed him, the ambition of the project igniting a desire he could not explain. He began to revel in the power he wielded, convincing himself that each expansion, each new acquisition, was for the benefit of Israel. Yet in the quiet moments, he could feel a growing unease, a sense that he was straying from the path he had once walked with such devotion. The wealth brought with it other temptations. Solomon, in his quest to secure alliances and strengthen his kingdom, began to marry foreign princesses, each marriage a strategic bond that furthered his influence. His wives came from distant lands, bringing with them the customs and gods of their people. At first, Solomon dismissed these practices, allowing his wives their rituals out of respect. But slowly, he found himself drawn to their ceremonies, the foreign shrines and idols sparking a curiosity he had never known. The shrines multiplied, their altars and statues standing in stark contrast to the temple he had built with such reverence. Solomon's nights, once filled with prayer and communion, became restless. He tried to quiet the voice of his conscience, rationalizing his choices as necessary for the kingdom's prosperity. Yet the peace that had once filled his soul was elusive, replaced by a gnawing doubt he could not ignore. Then one day a prophet came to him, bearing a message that struck him to the core. The prophet's words were heavy with sorrow and warning, speaking of God's disappointment, of the consequences that would come if Solomon did not turn from his ways. The kingdom would be divided, the prophet said, torn apart because of Solomon's unfaithfulness. The words lingered in Solomon's mind long after the prophet departed. He felt the weight of his choices, the distance he had placed between himself and the God he once served with his whole heart. Alone in his chamber, Solomon wept, the tears flowing freely as he realized the depth of his failings.